Good afternoon, welcome. Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, October 16th. Okay, the meeting is now in order. First on our agenda, under starred items, is the procedure for filling the vacancy for Ward 1.
This was just flagged in case there were any questions regarding the rules for the appointment.
Okay, so anyone have questions about the rules or how the process will work on Thursday? No?
I'm very familiar with them, but thank you for asking.
Okay. Okay, so we have 4 candidates, and we have the procedures pretty clear and easy to understand. So, okay, if you have questions, I guess before Thursday, make sure you ask them so that there's no issues on Thursday and we can conduct it in an orderly manner. Any other questions on unstarred items on that first page? None? Okay. On page 2, we have a start item for presentation regarding Synergy Equity Partners, LLC. TIF financing request. Who's handling that?
There are actually a couple of components to this one. I think the developer will actually be here on Thursday, but there's some supporting information for their request that Nick was going to be able to present today.
Mr. Glue?
All right, good afternoon. Hopefully you had an opportunity to take a look at this request. It's a little bit unique as it relates to how this community has supported some projects in the past, seeking to utilize some incentive to overcome a few different obstacles that we believe exist. And so when we first received this request from the applicant, talking about the fact that there was some difficulty out in that particular market, we didn't really know how to respond, how to feel about that. And so what we did is we did a little bit of market research to really help, I guess what we believe helps substantiate the request, and really has led to, together with the developer, this ultimate proposal that's in the request that hopefully you've read about. Do you have a question?
I don't mean to interrupt, but for purposes of others who may not be familiar with the specific project you're talking about, maybe you want to just elaborate a little bit.
Sure. So the project is relative to a multi-tenant commercial building that's under construction right now along Tower Terrace Road, located at the intersection of Tower Terrace Road and 3rd Street on the north edge of our community. The project is under construction, so again, that differentiates it a little bit. But again, this is a different type of incentive that we are contemplating. But that's the project, I guess, is what we're referencing. So I don't know if you want me to get into the details of the request. That's not what I intended to do today, but I think we're more than happy to talk about that in the end. City manager can fill you on some of those details as well. But we wanted to just help set the stage a little bit as we responded to this request and tried to figure out if we agreed with some of the requests. This is some of what we came up with. So again, just to kind of refamiliarize yourself with this site, this is a version of the site plan that exists out there. Again, it's the corner building at 3rd Street and Tower Terrace Road. I don't think anyone is arguing the fact that from a design standard standpoint, this is top of the market, right? This is probably nicer than anything that's being built, or as nice as anything that's being built within our metro area. So that's the building. Again, that's what's under construction today. So first thing we wanted to do as we were listening to developers, get an understanding of how this project truly is competing with like projects, specifically within our metro area. So the first thing we sought to do is really understand how this project would be received in some of our neighboring communities. And so that started with just understanding and making sure that we were on the same page and communicating. If this project were in Hiawatha, how would it have been approached from the beginning, right? So keep in mind, this developer has sought no incentives for this project. They're building the project. They are going to finish the project. That is not the challenge in this case. So Rewind, though, if this project were in some of our neighboring communities, Hiawatha, for instance, you'd have a standard 5-year 75% tax rebate that would be assigned to those projects. They do require some amount of jobs to be created with projects. However, they don't define what those jobs are, what the wages are. We have typically strayed away from really measuring job requirements with our projects. We really lean on the state of Iowa to define and measure that through their high quality jobs program. And so it just can be a very labor-intense process to manage, and so we really defer to our partners at the state when there are projects that have job requirements associated with them. But just to correlate it to that statement, when I was talking with their city manager, quite frankly, she said we keep it simple. So they keep it simple by all projects, 5 years, 75%. In North Liberty, and now, so think about North Liberty, the highway down there is a well-established market. They do not typically, for commercial projects, offer any standard incentive at all, unless there's some extraordinary factor associated with the project. But again, context-wise, think about that market, and just it's a much more advanced, mature market down in that particular area. Cedar Rapids, on the residential side, they're pretty aggressive. They have some very intentional goals related to, especially after the flood, replenishing some of their housing stock in that community. But still to this day, for larger multifamily type projects, they'll offer a 10-year, 100% type of incentive for those projects. On the commercial side, their standard is a 10-year, 44% tax exemption, or on a rebate side, 10-year, 50%. So we usually use the rebate here in our community, so that's how you'd compare that. 10-year, 50% is pretty standard in that community when it comes to a project like we're talking about here today. So that was one of the first things we looked at. Then I did a little research just looking at projects that are active in the market today, with the information that I was able to readily get as far as incentives awarded to them. Some of these projects are very familiar. We're all familiar with the Fountains. It's a large mixed-use project out on Edgewood Road and Blair's Ferry Road. That was a 5-year, 100% valued at about $3.7 million against a total estimated investment of $35. You can go down the list here. Northtown Market is the development across Blair's Ferry Road from Target. So where Rockwell is now doing their daycare. There's some multi-tenant commercial along there. You can see the incentive. I didn't have the information as far as like from a percentage standpoint what that was, but the dollar amount is what I do have available. Westdale, project we're very familiar with. Water Rock, so that is a project on the corner of, I'm going to say Rockwell Drive. Is that what that street is? And Blair's Ferry. Yep. So just to the east of that intersection, where 30 Hop is located now, that particular project is the one that this references, so you can see the incentive there. And then Edgewood Station, I actually believe that's like the corner of kind of the Westdale project there, near where there's a University of Iowa Community Credit Union, some other multi-tenant buildings. That's the project there. So again, that's a smaller one, so just a little over $2 million in the incentive there. So as far as projects that are on the market today, we're seeing tenants going to those spaces. Again, just wanted you to see how even in those projects that aren't necessarily anything over the top, although some of these are big developments, incentives are involved in those projects. The other thing we wanted to look at is putting this project in the context of just the environment that it is located in. So these are the most recent traffic counts that were provided to me from the city's engineering department. So this is 2017 data from the DOT. I put an X on the location of the project that we're talking about here this week. You can see Tower Terrace Road, the number on the left in that direction, 2100. You see the 2000 number on the right. I wanted to also give you a little context as it relates to 29th Avenue, because we have seen, we saw one project, just a nice little infill project on that corner. You can see there is quite a bit more traffic in that location, even compared to what we're talking about to the north. But what I also wanted to do is take a look at listings in the marketplace today. And I think it really, as it relates to retail and folks that rely and look at traffic counts, probably puts our site in a little bit better proportion with the rest. So you can see, based on the lease rates and the traffic count, you can see that Tower Terrace Road, as far as how someone, a retailer, a restaurant, looks at it, it's a little bit of a hard sell, right? We use about 2,100 cars per day compared to some of these other locations that while the lease rate isn't necessarily out of line, what you get as far as traffic counts is significantly different. You can't really compare this location to any of these active listings that I was able to find out there on the MLS today. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So just to kind of put some points out there that we think are worthy of considering. Obviously, we're making no arguments that from a design standpoint, this product is top of the line. However, as we were working collectively to put this proposal in front of you, we want to make sure it's very narrowly focused. So we wanted to talk about how this project would meet an identified community need, a gap within the marketplace. And that's where you should have some data in front of you. This is a report that we pulled, this ESRI data. It pulls data that we don't even know people know about, how we spend money, potential of spending. It digs into demographics to ultimately arrive at this. This is the first time that I've seen a report like this that so clearly illustrates the gap that exists out in that particular area of the community. So we looked at it from a 1 mile, 2 mile, and 3 mile radius. You have a lot more details in front of you, but this is the summary of the data. So if you talk just about retail trade and food and drink, if you add those up, when it takes a look at a mile around that location, it says the demand based on households located in that radius is about $120 million. The supply is about $20 million. So it can't be satisfied within that area. That means we have a significant amount of leakage, meaning people within 1 mile of that area have to go outside of that radius to get the services within that particular category. You can see by the number of businesses, I think we'd all agree, if we think about a mile from that area, we're probably in about that number of businesses in that particular sector. It's interesting when you go to 2 mile. 2 mile picks up Uptown Marion. Okay, so we do have a few more businesses that begin to populate in that particular area. We're grabbing more households, so you can see the demand goes up because of that, and we're capturing more businesses, so you see the supply number goes up as well. But still a significant gap within the marketplace, within this particular sector. When you go to 3 miles, that's where the numbers change, because now we're going far enough out that we're picking up the Lindell Mall area. Collins Road is within that 3 miles. So just some interesting numbers, again, as we look at the marketplace. And that's probably my phone ringing in the back of the room. I apologize. It's nice, embarrassing. So anyway, wanted to share that information with you as you guys consider this. Again, as we design this, we want this to be a narrow focus. So as you read through it, this incentive is designed to not be something for the developer, is designed to be something for the end user to help them overcome what we feel are market barriers to folks seriously looking at this particular area of our community. So we have sought to define a traditional sit-down restaurant and then other services that would not compete with other businesses established within, I think we defined it as a 1 mile radius in that area of the community. The intention would not be for this to be something that would set a precedent, rather to spark really the market out there, designed to support first-in investment in that particular area of the community. Obviously, as you look at our incentive policy, we talk about diversifying the tax base, so any type of commercial development is a good. But again, this development is going to happen. It's just a matter of getting the right mix of businesses to fill and to overcome the market challenges that are out there. I think I stated everything in here. The only other thing I wanted to share with you is if you were so inclined to put together an incentive package, again, designed to reduce the lease rate for qualified tenants. As you look at your packet and understand this proposal, what it would provide for is up to $30,000 a year should the entire building be leased with a qualified tenant. The likelihood of that happening, who knows? But if the whole building were leased out to a qualified tenant, it would take $30,000 a year to impact the lease rates as proposed in your packet. As far as what does that mean from a tax revenue standpoint, most of you have seen these charts. What we do is we model the tax revenue generated based on the bare ground today, so that is year zero. Even with that potential maximum $30,000 incentive annually, you can see what that does just to revenue to the city, to the schools, and then the gold represent that incentive back to the developer that's passed on in the reduced lease rates. I just wanted to share that with you. In all reality, if we would implement that, it would be the equivalent of a 5-year 60% rebate. So when you think back to what these projects would automatically get in our neighboring communities, that's essentially what it would equate out to as we would turn that into a development agreement. In the
5 years, 60%?
That's basically what that equals. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of the context that I wanted to provide to you. Again, the developers will be here on Thursday to kind of share their story, although I think you kind of understand what it is. But we wanted them to be here before the council, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. Realize it's a little bit of a unique situation, but hopefully you kind of understand the gist of where we're headed.
Any questions from Mr. Glue on this?
I just
Yes,
have
go
one.
ahead.
You mentioned the precedent, not setting a precedent. So how would you handle if a different developer wanted to come in that stretch and do something similar?
Yeah.
What's that conversation?
Well, I don't know if you want to add, but I think one of the ways is we're specifically defining the reasons in the development agreement why we're doing this. And actually in your TIF policy, it specifically calls out first in,
so that
investment.
language.
A lot of these words we're using are right from the policy.
Protect
So we're
it.
trying to be very intentional about writing to those specific reasons so that there's not an idea within our development community that anybody that lines up with a project along Tower Terrace Road is, this is going to be available to them.
Yeah, and it's really, from my perspective, there's a matter of timing as well. We've got a developer out there who is seeking to build a building, is building a building, and they want to bring in some tenants that fit within the neighborhood zoning that we've established for that area. The conditions out there will change in a couple of years once Tower Terrace Road is connected to C Avenue. So at that point, you would expect to see the traffic counts on this road go way up, and it will become easier to market it. I think what really became apparent with this one, and they can articulate it to you themselves on Thursday, is that they started building this building with the understanding that they actually had 2 potential restaurant tenants that would have fit into this. In that period of time, one of those tenants went over to one of the projects that Nick was outlining for you that is able to offer a lower lease rate because the developer was receiving an incentive. And for the staff side, when we look at this project, we've had the words accelerate in the TIF policy ever since it was adopted. This is really the first chance we've had to operationalize it. It's the first project that's really come in with a full-on request for that. So what we've been doing is figuring out the mechanics of what we would want to have in that development agreement to make sure that that's what we're really getting after. So when we start looking at projects like this, you would consider them being first in, because then you're helping to establish and set the market. But later ones that come in when the market is more established would still have to go through the evaluation process, and if their pro formas don't bear out that there's a need for it, then they wouldn't have to have that. And even with what's been presented in here so far, even with the potential buy down that they're looking at for this, there's still a couple dollars a square foot above the established rates in the uptown market area. So even with what they're proposing here within our own market, we're not even making them 100% competitive for other facilities in Marion.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that this is a neat kind of creative way. I mean, I'm in Ward 4, and I know that there's been a lot of land for sale for a while, and I'm glad that they're moving forward to build it because the population is coming, and it'd be nice to have some commercial out there to support that based on your leakage alone.
I think a lot of us in the community believe there is a market there.
Yeah.
The unfortunate side is the way that retailers look at market, it's hard for them to quantify. And so
Traffic counts.
I think the developer will share with you that they'll get so far in a conversation with a potential tenant, and they'll say, if it's so great, why isn't anybody here?
Who's first?
Right? So it's really about creating that spark. We'd love to accelerate their ability to get to building that next building, right? We need that additional, I mean, if you just talk about tax base, we want to accelerate that future investment. And this is, I think there's several great things that are being accomplished as you consider this project.
Including just the quality of the construction, which is something that is worth being incented, I think, because we don't often get that. Someone who's willing to put forth a top quality project, which really benefits the citizens.
Yeah, and to your point, it aligns with several of our strategic goals, this project specifically, plan growth, design standards, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
So I also understand, I mean, the first-in concept, we've discussed that on other projects in the past over a number of years. And again, I also know that being the first in also has a higher risk, as they're kind of figuring out right now. But if I look at this in the future, this is the first in, but what you were showing up there with some of your numbers is a pretty large gap in the retail aspect of that. So is this really going to mean first in, or is this going to mean the first few in, because there's still a gap? So do you anticipate, or do you foresee that if somebody else wants to do a similar project along that area, that because you still have this gap, that you anticipate the first in gets a little broader?
Well, I mean, that's a great policy question that I think you guys all get to wrestle with if and when we bring you that question or that project. I think it might be a different scenario if we looked out there and saw anything. I think if you look at that total gap being closed, that's going to be a long-term thing, if ever. Those numbers may never look perfect.
They're never going to get even.
Just the reality of how our community has developed.
Okay.
But if we don't even see the beginning of that happening, I think that's where, again, we want to help create that momentum. Who knows? I mean, in the absence of nothing, what's that?
Oh, the first in concept is to take the guesswork out for the next person who would want to locate there to prove that it is that the market is there, when they're guessing and they're saying, why is nobody here?
Yeah, we don't want the developer to put up such a nice-looking building and then have it sit empty for a while. So, I mean, I understand the first-in concept. I'm in support of that. Sure. So I'm just trying to make sure.
There's a lot of areas, quite frankly, in our community that we can pull these reports and put a pin drop on, and they would suggest we need to do
lots
something.
Of places.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
This is the only one, though, that when you drop that pin on that intersection and pull these radiuses, it's literally like ghost town until you
There's
get
nothing
out
out
to
there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's necessarily a question, but I guess when you're talking about the first in, I guess it's going to be how it's interpreted as first in. Is it first in building? Is it first in of a specific retailer or type of business? I mean, because that's going to be more of, I think, a council
That's our interpretation,
of what first in is in the future, kind of to go off your question about first in. So.
Yeah.
And this one is geared toward a very specific type of business. So if the
With this,
developer
yes,
goes out
yes.
and would bring in somebody else that doesn't fit the criteria that we're talking about here, they wouldn't receive the incentive.
Right.
So it's only if they happen to pull in one of those qualified ones. Because one of the concerns we had is, we have, for example, a very large dental office that was just put out there without any incentives in it. So we don't want to provide an incentive for them to go out and pull in a competitor to that established business in town. So when we're looking at the criteria for this, it couldn't be a franchised restaurant unless it was one that was absolutely new to market. So we're looking for more of that local flavor of restaurant, and then we define that they couldn't bring anything in that was a direct competitor, for example, to another business in 1 mile profile of this so that they're not bringing in someone using our dollars to buy that down and unfairly compete with an established business. So it's tied to the business itself, not necessarily the facility, although this facility would be the first one to be eligible.
That 1 mile radius that was established is really designed to capture that 29th Avenue area, but that's really the only additional
It's all
area
there.
beyond that it can grab.
Other questions for Mr. Glue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda items. Our first, our first start item is number 1A2.
This is just to notate that the special work session is Monday, October 29th at 4 o'clock regarding the CIP.
Questions on that?
Is that 4 to 5, 4 to 6, 4 to 7? It's anticipated?
7:15 is the Patriots-Bills game, so
Ooh,
we
yeah.
should limit this.
I would take it at
Say
that
it.
point, it's 4 to 7.
That's right, yeah.
It's 4 until we get done.
Yes.
Okay. Other
Nobody wants to see the Patriots.
other questions under number 1 there? Otherwise, we have number 5, which is a resolution approving schedule of alcohol violations. Who's presenting that?
This
Rachel?
was just to get in writing the schedule, so it's clear to PD and the clerk's office as far as when suspensions occur, when payments are due.
Does anybody have comments on that?
Well, that's those are by state law anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
We have a little bit of discretion as far as when we want suspensions to start, but we wanted to make it start right after the period of appeal so that we don't have the question of deferrals come up and it being a gray type of area question, just so that it's uniform.
A little
Uniformity is
clarification.
always good.
No clarification then.
Okay. Any questions on that one? None? Okay. Any questions on any unstarred items? Is this, the number 7, is that meant to be discussed? Was that intended to be discussed by staff?
Only
It's
if
a new item,
you
right?
choose to. Only if you choose to. It was to appoint a council member.
Right, so we will be appointing someone on Thursday to that position. Okay. Any other unstarred items that are up for, that you'd like to discuss or have questions on
I do.
under the consent agenda? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so number 8, I was just curious, we got the list, and I know those fees are generally small. Did many of those shake out? I know we were going to send a bill, but these were published, I believe. So I was wondering how much, if we collected many of that, many of those delinquent fees, or?
I haven't reviewed it since I put together the
Okay.
list. They're given 30 days to pay, and I double-check that to make sure that they are paid before they actually are assessed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions on anything else on the consent agenda? I guess both consent agendas. Nothing else is starred. Nothing to discuss?
I have one more. Are we
Go ahead.
already here?
Well, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are. Go ahead.
Okay, G1, under City Manager's Office. I had asked, I spoke with Lon about this and just wondered if we could include, and I know we were really close, the city's strategic goals in the description on one of the, I think it was Appendix C. It had the size of Marion and some of our data, and I was just wondering if we could add that as a reference, that we could see how many boxes we can check. For instance, the discussion we just had that Nick presented would check 2 boxes of our strategic goals. So when people are applying for TIF under our economic development policy, if we could, as a council, just see at a glance, do they meet are they in line with any of our strategic goals? Are they in line with 3 of them? I think that just helps make a stronger case for applicants we're looking at. So, Lon, we were going back and forth a little bit on that document. Could we include that? I think there was one that wasn't on there, but the rest kind of were. Would there be an issue with that?
No,
Okay,
not at all.
that's all I have.
Okay. On to the regular agenda. Under engineering, we have a number of items starred. Mr. Barkalow?
I'll get the screens changed here. Number 1 and 2 are just the final reading on the access fees. In case you guys have any questions on those. Number 3, we, per resolution 25672, we put a temporary truck embargo on Lucor Road between Indian Creek Road and the North City limits. That was due to the condition of the road at the time. We were reconstructing Winslow at the time, and the potholes were getting bigger and bigger on Lucor. So we put that in there. Now that we've had the ribbon cutting and Lucor is now open and reconstructed, we can lift that embargo.
Makes sense. Very nice road, by the way. Any questions on that?
Just real
Go ahead.
one.
Yes, sir.
Were there issues with that bridge at all, or was that the one on Winslow?
So we only have one bridge that has an embargo on it, and that is the southerlymost Winslow Bridge.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it's Winslow.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Number 4?
Number 4, so at the last council meeting, we approved the 3-way stop sign at West Williams and as part of the subdivision that we annexed in as part of that development. What we're worried about is the same thing that we were worried about on some of the other streets of this cut-through traffic to get to Lau Park or to get to this development. So we're recommending that we actually place a temporary embargo then on Williams Drive, because that, again, is just a county chip seal road, and we don't want those trucks to deteriorate it. It talks about in the memo, we've tried talking to the builders, developers, and everyone and asked them nicely not to do it, and that does not work. So actually putting a sign up where the police department can enforce that seems to be the only way to do that.
So
We
is
will
it-
still reach out to them and ask them not to, but sometimes you have to have a stick behind it as well.
So it's the construction truck traffic you're concerned about?
Yep.
Degrading that road?
Yep.
Okay, and that's temporary until when? Until it's...
Until we lift it by another resolution.
Right, but what's the...
Till it's improved?
So
Yeah, we have
It would
one
be
right
when we-
currently on Rolling Glen that's been there for quite a while, so I would see leaving it there until we actually go in there and improve that road.
Because that's a kind of a... It's the same as Lucor Road was, right?
Yep.
A rural road, so it'd have to be rebuilt and urbanized and all that.
Yep, and eventually there'll be sanitary sewer, storm sewer, all that stuff built with it.
Okay. So it's not a immediate thing that...
No, but
Happen,
once
it's
that
gonna-
road opens, then we're gonna start seeing trucks on it, and that's what breaks your road up,
Yeah.
is those heavy trucks.
Okay. Questions on that?
Yeah, first time, with an embargo, Mike, you talk about you put signage up. Do we send, again, follow-up letters to all of those companies most likely to be using it? And then it sounds like the only enforcement is really the police, and then I'm assuming then there's some potential fine because there is an embargo.
Correct. So what we've done in the past is, before putting the embargo, we just ask them nicely, please don't use this road, the neighbors don't like it, you're driving too fast. And it kind of falls on deaf ears because, they might have told their truck drivers once, or maybe they're not telling them at all.
Okay.
And so we've just found that it's not effective. I mean, we'll still try, but yeah, until the police department is issuing them a citation, they have a chance to possibly lose their CDL. I don't know if it matters to them.
So it's not, it's more, it could be more than just a dollar fine or monetary fine?
I guess I would lean on the chief on that, but I don't know. I would assume if you have CDL and you have so many tickets that eventually you would lose your CDL.
Right, yeah, that I understand. Okay.
I'll look into that for you on whether or not it would be considered a moving violation, which I would think it would, and points would be assessed or not.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Sir?
Is that something you or let the neighbors on that, or the residents of that street know that there's an embargo so that they could tattle, I guess. So they can
Well,
let
the signs
PD
are up.
know.
And, I mean, the signs are up. Typically, I don't know that we did not send a letter out to all the property owners or anything, but I can tell you when Public Service puts the signs up, they're not gonna protest, or they never have before.
Sure. I just wondered if it'd be good to, if they need to know to say, hey, if you see traffic on here constantly, call the police.
Usually they have no problem picking up the phone and calling.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's good.
Whether there's an embargo or not, they usually don't have a problem picking up the phone.
Yeah.
Or emailing one of you guys.
Yes, sure. I'm sure we will hear about it. Okay. Number 5?
So in the current CIP and budget, it was planned to bond for the project to improve Albernet Road and Echo Hill. We've done the traffic study, and it's showing that intersection should be a full roundabout. So with that construction, one of the big issues is with that school bond vote, there's going to be a new school built right here, and they're planning on breaking ground in the spring. And since this is currently their only way in and out until they get a secondary access in, it's going to be very hard to construct this intersection anyways, and I don't know that we want to have both of them going at the same time. You guys have seen our CIP and how many wants are out there and needs. And so what we're recommending is to actually apply for TSIP funding. And I put in your memo, you can see, basically I gave you 2 choices. If you proceed now, we can go ahead and solicit for engineering firms. It'll take about a month and a half to get those back to us, make a selection, get them back to you guys to approve. Then 3 to 6 months, depending on acquisitions and staging and utilities. There's some overhead utilities that we're going to have to figure out if that will work as part of the roundabout. And then bidding the project is typically 2 months by the time we go to the public hearing and give the contractors a month to get the bid out there. So we're going to start in the middle of the construction season, which isn't ideal. And when you're bidding it in April, you're not going to get the best prices because contractors are already booked for the season. So what we're recommending is actually waiting, apply for TSIP funds. We can go ahead and start the design process so that we have the plans ready to go, so that even if we don't get the TSIP funding, at least we have the plans ready to go. There is a maximum award on the TSIP funds of $500,000, but that's $500,000 that we don't have to come up with. There are a few additional hoops that we have to jump through for TSIP funding. It's not as much as the 7th and 7th roundabout. There's some small things like we have to do targeted small businesses. We have to reach out to them and get them to try and bid on the project. The last project that we did was the mini roundabout at 29th and 35th, and we didn't have any TSBs that actually bid on the project. But as long as we show our due diligence, they're okay with that. So the funding would not be available until July 1 of 2020. Because I'm sure you guys recall, we applied for a bunch of TSIP projects not too long ago, and that was the deadline for this year. So we've already missed that deadline, but we can always submit early. But again, they don't decide until January of 2020. So that's our recommendation, unless you guys feel really strongly that we need to get this intersection under construction now.
Ms. Gadela has a question.
Yeah, I can't remember where I read it. I think I read it somewhere that maybe we could talk to Linmar about chipping in. Am I making that
so
up?
typically how that works is so let's just use an obvious one of Menards. Menards would work. And so when they built Menards, those signals that they put in, we made them put them in as part of that development because they were causing those traffic queues. So typically what we do is if the school district is causing those queues because of the added traffic volumes, that's something that council could decide that you need to pitch in and pay for a portion of that intersection improvement. If there's a development on the northwest that was more than just residential houses, if it was a big node, if a Walmart was going in there and we needed traffic signals, we would make Walmart put those traffic signals in there.
Yeah, I don't know when it's prudent to have that conversation, but I feel like Linmar should be approached. They've got their whole PEPL fund. With that school coming, grades 5, 6, and 7, I'm not sure how they're going to do their sports, but if they have after-school activities and sports and games, they're definitely going to be contributing to the volume at various, not even just morning and right after school, but afternoon, evening, concerts, band, orchestra, you name it. I feel like Linmar should have some skin in the game. I don't know.
And I don't think it's ever too soon to start that
Yeah.
conversation.
They'll need to work it in.
So what we're doing right now is their engineer has to do a traffic study based on what they're going to generate for traffic. And once we get that, then that conversation can start. But until we have that traffic of what they feel that they're going to cost the intersection, we don't know yet.
Okay.
Other comments on that? Yes, sir.
So my clarification, so for option number one, if I'm understanding that would be, if we did option number one, that would be constructing that at the same time Linmar's constructing their new fifth, sixth grade school in 2019, because that's supposed to open in the fall of 2020. So that seems to be, banging heads with them and creating a real traffic jam out there, especially for the amount of time it would take. But your option number two then seems to make a little more sense, to take a little more time, let them get that project done. And again, same thing with Renee. If they're part of that traffic issue, then, so I'm assuming that's the primary reason, besides getting some support funding, of putting it out to avoid that conflict.
That conflict, just the amount of trucks and loads that they're going to have coming in there and stuff, it's never good to have two projects that close together.
That's what I said. Okay.
Good.
If I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been discussing with Linmar for some time now on building the school there, that they need a secondary access for emergency response. And they're telling me that they may not have the monies to do so. So I don't know if they're going to be able to help you out with that intersection, providing monies. So I just wanted to let the council know that might not be an option.
That's what I have to say about that.
Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Where would a second access be?
That's what
So-
we're working on.
Yeah, so we've looked at several, this development to the north. Unfortunately, it's a couple different developers that are up there, but they could develop another section of that. Another one we looked at is even an internal network, so that this cuts off, but this trail goes down to the other school, and they can widen that so it's a fire access only, is the one that we've looked at. We looked at small things like Smithland, but the problem is even if you connect Smithland in there, this isn't the best road, and then you still have limited your one access here. So it doesn't fully fix that. Same thing if you just connected this in. Again, you have if there's an accident in this area, there's nowhere for the fire engines to get around, and that's the issue with it.
Sure. I wouldn't think you would want it to go through the residential.
Well, if there's an accident, they just want some way to get
I
there.
understand. I'm just saying that 90%, 99% of the time is going to be a cut through for people to cut through the residential neighborhood. But anyway.
Was there ever a plan to connect Smithland to that road to the south?
There is, but I can tell you will have some resistance there.
Well, I know. Yeah, but so is that in the future, or is that?
Yeah, that could be a future solution, but again, if an accident occurs between here and here, it doesn't solve the safety issue.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, we'll have to look at options even when we stage this construction of the roundabout, of how do we keep that intersection open and keep Echo Hill Road functioning at the same time, because the more you chop that project up, the more expensive it gets.
So what's the action item for Thursday on this, Mike?
So our recommendation is to apply for TSIP funding and go ahead and solicit an engineering firm so that we can get started on this project.
Okay, so that will be what we're voting on Thursday.
Yep, we'll change it to that action item if that's what you guys are leaning towards.
Okay,
Can I ask another question?
sure, go ahead.
What's option B? You said option A, best option is roundabout. What's option B?
As far as the intersection, that's what we're looking at, is roundabout is the option to go with.
There's no option
I mean,
B.
we did look at traffic signals, but the roundabout is the best option as far as
I'm just thinking
moving forward.
dollar amount. I mean, big difference, I think, I would assume, between a roundabout and,
Well, you have to look at a lot of things, maintenance, land acquisition, that sort of thing as well, too.
I mean, we're working on the CIP, and there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of stuff in there. I don't know if this is something to decide on now or after the CIP, when we choose what projects are going to move forward and what aren't.
What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Barclow?
Since it's already in the current budget as a project that we were going to bond for, I would still move forward with it. We have started to have more accidents out here at this intersection, and it's only going to increase.
I guess I was not aware it was in the budget.
It was planned to be part of the GO bond of 19.
Yes, gotcha. For how much?
$1 million.
$1 million. That makes a difference.
It is it is an important intersection out there, and it's just going to get busier and busier. So, yes.
A couple of concerns I have is one is, again, we got developers leading the city as to what we're doing and how we're spending monies. Is Linmar, have we seen plans? Is this a 100% go?
We haven't. We've just had preliminary discussions with their engineer on this is where we're looking to go, and that's why there's been conversations with the fire chief about the secondary access.
Okay, so if we have those reservations, and especially with it being a public school and the amount of people, if we don't have that secondary access in there, I'm assuming this project is
From what I understand, the chief is going to put a no to it if there's not a secondary
and rightfully
access.
so, and I would totally agree. I'm concerned with having this on the Thursday's agenda without knowing exactly where we're going with this. I hate spending resources of City Hall on projects that may not come through. So I don't know if it'd be appropriate for us to table this.
Well, irregardless of the school going in or not, the traffic warrants for the roundabout are met today, because that's what we did the traffic study on. So we actually did counts of what's going on there today.
So then that takes the validity out of it and saying that the school shares the responsibility in this, because now we're putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. Correct?
That's not to say that they're not causing additional, we might have to modify it a little bit because of their numbers once they submit those to us.
I guess at this point, I'm just not comfortable with it, but thank you.
Well, if the traffic counts with or without the school justify the project, and the traffic, and then the additional traffic from the school, then once that's added on top of it, could justify their participation. I mean, I don't see what the concern is there, but.
Well, I guess just to follow up, I mean, we have those points around our city that still, and we got Indian Creek and 29th Avenue. Same problem. We haven't resolved that problem either until we know what the school's doing. Same issue out here. I mean, we've been talking about that area getting busy and busy and busy, but yet all of a sudden we're going to slam a roundabout in there based on the studies. I totally get it. I don't want to disregard the study, but I'm just saying we all knew this intersection was getting bad, and I'm just concerned with, again, putting those resources into something just at this point. I'm just a little, we're not there yet. I mean, we think there's a school going in there, but if it doesn't go through, we've got a roundabout that's been built for that capacity, but again, we're not there. We got other projects going on as well too. So,
I guess to back up a little bit, when we originally put this in the budget for the GO 19, that was before we knew that the school was going to go in. We didn't know if the bond was going to pass or not. So I guess we're looking at the intersection of, we already have an issue out here. We're already having an increase in accidents out here. So we feel that we need to do something sooner rather than later out here, irregardless of if the school goes in. And that's why with the TSIP funds, it only scores like a 3-to-1 versus, I think, the 31st and 100 was a 6-to-1. But so I mean, it still scores fairly decent.
Mr. Jensen has a question.
But Mike, if we're clearly understanding option B that you're recommending, we're talking about going ahead and a small amount of money to fund the study, but with the timeline you're talking about, would that roundabout really be put in calendar year 2020 or 2021?
Well, the money does not become available until July 1st of 2020.
Okay, so does that mean we're talking really construction in 2021?
No, it could start July 1st of 2020. If we have more than likely with the roundabout, we're going to have the design already done. We're actually going to have the DOT review it ahead of time. And it's just a matter of going through their process to review the plans that they're okay with.
I mean, I'd be okay moving ahead in that direction, knowing that that is almost 2 years out. You know, that we got it ready to go, and then by then, we're clearly going to know what's going on with the school. And like I say, you're already saying that, you know, then we know exactly what the roundabout should be designed like and for what capacity.
But the the explosion of construction out there, I mean, with or without the school traffic,
Well, that corner.
that northwest corner, I mean, how many lots, I'm trying to remember, 100 and some lots in one subdivision alone, I mean, those have been approved, they're going to be sold, they're going to be constructed. There's that traffic is going to be there. Yes, Chief?
If it may help with the decision-making here. In my discussions with Linmar, it's pretty certain that school's going to go there because they planned on that school being there when they built the elementary school there, the Echo Hill. What they're looking at is a campus type, meaning the elementary school that's already there. Next to it would be the 5th, 6th, and then right south is Oak Ridge, which is the junior high, and they want to make that whole area one campus. So I can't see them really moving to another spot. I think they're really going to try hard to try to find me that secondary access. And I've helped them with some alternatives that would be less costly for them. So I'm really thinking it's going to go there, and I would hope that we would fix that intersection before that school is done, because it's already a problem with the amount of traffic.
Just
Mayor Pro Tem.
one thing to contribute to what Deb's saying. Yeah, Linmar purchased that land more than a decade ago. It's definitely going there because they didn't have to bond for that land money. They had to buy the land for the other school site, and they'll have to pay for the schools. But it's definitely going to go there.
Is there anything else, Mr. Sternad? Mr. Brandt?
I think, back to Randy's point, that you were saying that if the school doesn't go there, the traffic counts if they're not adding to the intersection. But I think with Echo Hill already there, that's part of why the traffic counts there are today and why it's needed today. And the second question is, what's the time frame on Echo Hill Road going further to the east? Is that 3, 4, 5 years, or is that 20 years out?
I believe the property to the east is owned by the diocese, and a lot of that is part of the Berry Run moratorium. And so until that sanitary is fixed, I don't see that moving.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that item?
So we'll structure it as option 2 for Thursday, and then you guys can vote on it.
That okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. One more item under engineering and then community development. I'm turning the gavel over to Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Number 8?
We got item number 6, yep. 7.
Okay. 6 and 7.
So number 6 and 7 is regarding the same intersection. Right now, you can see in the picture, there's one light out at this intersection. Some of the accidents that we've had out here are due to the lighting. This isn't going to solve all the issues, but this is a request to at least brighten the intersection in the interim before we actually make the improvements. So 6 is just receiving, filing, and discussing the TAC, which is from staff. So that's in your packet. Item number 7, we've made contact with Lynn County REC, and they'll install 2 additional lights for us for $1,470, or they'll do 1 light for $860. So we're recommending that we install 2 for the $1,470 to try and help improve that safety of that intersection.
Would they be in the way of the future roundabout, or are we going to construct
Possibly, but it's just what they're going to do is, you can see the overhead electric. They're just going to add a mast arm on that and energize it. So they're not going to put up anything else. And same thing with This one, we're gonna try and get them to change the angle so that it's more directed towards the intersection rather than lighting the cars that are parked there.
Sounds good. Anything else on this one? Okay, moving on.
Item number 8 is the addendum number 1 that formally failed on 9/20/18. So this was due to some council members being absent, but I can go through any of the packet if you guys want that.
Okay.
Anybody? I think we're good.
Okay.
So on to community development.
Good timing.
Not displaying right. All right, there we go. So items 1 through 4, I did speak with Mr. Draper, and he asked that these be removed. And I think what we'll do is we'll just remove them and then probably start the process over again at a later date. I think this has been continued for a number of times, so they just won't be on the agenda. I think we're well beyond the time where we probably need to just reschedule a public hearing and start it over. So
I think that sounds good. That's then 1 through
1 through 4, yeah.
Okay. Everybody okay with that? Yeah. Yep, okay, great.
The next item that's starred there is number 5. This is the a memorandum of agreement between the city and GLD Properties LLC. And if you recall, when the land where the Marriott is and the Culver project was developed, the city had owned a bunch of the railroad right away, and we sold it to GLD, but we retained a 35-foot access easement across there. So that ground's, it's not developable, it's limited because of that access easement, primarily for the trail. This is just illustrating where that trail is. It's along the roundabout, and you can see where it's just kind of highlighted here. It goes to 31st. The city actually completed 31st to 35th. If you go out there now, you can see some of the grading going on. We didn't have a development agreement in place to secure that we would pay for that. So we're moving forward with the memorandum of understanding or a memorandum of agreement relative to the project. And we've reviewed the general scope of the work. It's a $190,000 project. A portion of that, about $50,000 of that is landscaping and walls and retaining walls. And so within the development agreement, we've left that as an option that we'll need to work through internally to determine if we want to do it internally, work with the Parks Department or not. What we're really trying to do is just make sure that we can get that trail in this fall. So this would provide for that. We have to spring to deal with the landscaping, and there's some retaining walls associated with that as well. If you've driven out there and looked back behind, you can see the land kind of falls off. So there is some grade issues that we'll have to deal with. If there's any questions on that.
It kind of looks like they've got that rough graded already.
Yeah, they've been great, and that's why we're trying to get this through. They've rough graded as part of the projects,
Yeah.
and some of the stuff's come together. So, yep.
Will?
Is this going to be all the way from 31st all the way over?
It will not connect into the roundabout because there's still that last piece, but it goes a little ways.
So this will be behind or north of Barnes's property, all the way to the road.
Yeah. So it'll extend from 31st west, further, even past the Marriott. So
Was it just stuff sitting on the easement, or is there actually building on the easement?
There is a small building on the easement, a little bit of a fence. Mr. Barnes has moved most of his, I think it's all off, actually. His was well on, and the trail was very close. There's been a bunch of concrete that was placed there that's been removed. We're still working with the owner of the property that has the facility on. It's an old, I think it's an old railroad building, actually. Wouldn't surprise me. And then there is a little bit of an encroachment by his fence, so we're still working with them. So that's why we're trying to determine whether the walls associated with the trail project are there because we have encroachments. And clearly, if we're having to spend money because someone's encroaching, we don't want that situation. So we're going to work through that process. Ideally, we would have any encroachment off our property or an agreement in place, but we certainly don't want to incur any cost associated with an encroachment that's not permitted. So that's kind of where we're at.
And is it going to be blacktop like the rest of it?
No, this will be concrete.
Concrete? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, no, that is nice.
Anything else on number 5? Okay, relinquish the gavel back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you. Number 6.
Number 6, this is just the approving the plat of survey relative to the Gill property and the city's acquisition of property south of Tower Terrace between Gill Park and Tower Terrace for the fire station. I think we've talked about this one quite a bit, but this is just actually just approving the parcel of ground that will be transferred as a part of the project. The actual plat of survey, I believe, is in your packet. I'm just showing a general location.
Questions or comments on that? Okay, number 7.
Number seven is just the second consideration on the Code of Ordinance regarding use standards. I really wasn't going to go into this. I'm just asking questions if there's any questions on that.
Questions? None? Okay, moving on. Number 8.
Number 8, you should have a copy of the accessory structures ordinance, as was discussed.
I don't think anybody got it. Push it back another couple weeks.
Why is everybody looking at you?
I know. Everybody's looking at me. What?
Staff is literally just throwing this on the counter and letting you guys go.
Bring your popcorn.
Let me know if you have questions. Does that work?
So 900 was removed. Good to know. No?
I read it
Sorry.
wrong.
Do we need to recess for a moment?
I wasn't planning to present it unless you guys had questions on that. Provides a conditional use permit for a larger structure than 900 square feet.
Can you filibuster with Robert's Rules of Order?
Number
Okay.
10.
All right.
No questions on it?
So item number 10, I just wanted to provide the council with some, we've talked about the central corridor overlay standards, and we've talked about the interim development ordinance, and we've been back and forth to the council a number of times to extend that. We are at a point where we've got some solid ordinance language that we're going to be moving forward with. We're going to take it to the Planning Commission, to the Steering Committee and the Planning Commission at the next meeting. What's that?
Is this the last extension?
I'm going to say yes, unless something crazy comes out of the public hearing process that requires things to change. And I will say, though, that the overlay, the IDO, has really done what it's supposed to do. I know we keep extending it, but it really has done what it's supposed to do. We do have the documents moving forward. So the vision plan, I'm just illustrating portions of it. It's up to date. It's showing the park plan. It's showing the plaza on 11th Street, the plaza between 11th and the park. And it's also extending the plaza area north to the Art in the Alley. You can see you're seeing green spaces identified around the roundabout. It incorporates the current roundabout plan. If if I was able to sit down with the developer previous to this, I don't have an illustration that shows like a long-range vision for the corridor and how we'd like to see it come together. If you notice, the buildings are set up close to the street. It kind of paints a little bit a better picture of what we're trying to incorporate. We've got pieces of a planning document from 10 years ago, the Central Corridor Plan, but even the street alignment moving east out of the downtown is not reflective of the engineering that happened after the plan. So this is just kind of providing that update to the vision plan. And you can see as we move east, the 15th Street roundabout. We kind of split the drawing at 15th, but if you look, you can kind of see how we'd envision that being developed with the buildings kind of around the roundabout and creating some public spaces to kind of highlight the intersection. You can see the buildings we're showing along 7th Avenue to be up front and on 6th, so they're directly adjacent to the street so that you don't have the parking in front of the building, which I can tell you that may or may not be very popular, but when you're trying to create a walkable area, it's essential. So you can see how we're trying to line the street with the buildings and landscaping and keep the parking in the middle or beside the building. And the zoning that I'm going to walk through quickly it'll highlight that situation. So the current zoning, and I'm not going to get into all the gory details, I'm going to just give you a high level, and then as this moves through the process, you'll see it again when we do a public hearing on the actual adoption. The current zoning, the pink area here in the middle is the C2 district, so that's our current commercial business district. The red is our C3. The red, and one of the reasons for the IDO is that this C3 district is the same C3 district as where Walmart is. So car dealerships, implements, and there's a lot of uses that we really wouldn't want to see in this area, but were necessary when this was the edge of town. That's the IDO is kind of tightened that up. The reddish brown, this is the C4 district. This is probably one of our most liberal districts. It allows everything from light manufacturing to commercial retail to bars to warehouse. I mean, it just allows almost anything, and when you drive down Fifth Avenue, you can get that sense. So what we've moved to is creating a district where the yellow, my highlighter's not showing up here, but the yellow is the traditional uptown district, so we're calling that the U1. The red is a U2 district, which is an uptown district that allows for taller buildings and full block build out. So you can see where the blue right below my pointer is a blue. That's a public institutional district. That's City Square Park. Directly east of that are 2 blocks that are red. That's the U2 district. That's providing the opportunity for a full block build out. So if someone wanted to come in and build the mixed use building, if the library redevelops and it's a full block build out, 250 by 250, it provides that opportunity. The yellow is our traditional district, and you can imagine if someone came in and just said, I want to buy this entire block and build that all out, it would not fit in the character of the block. So we've reduced those lot sizes to 120 foot deep, which is our traditional block size. The difference between, I'm going to just say the red district and the yellow district, the U1 and the U2, are lot sizes and then your setbacks. In our U1 along 7th Avenue, we don't want any setback. We want that building right on the property line, just like all the other buildings. It's more of the historic context of that commercial district. In the red, or the U2 district, we've provided the opportunity to go up to a 12-foot setback. So Phil High's building is set back, I don't know exactly, but probably 10 feet. But that provides an opportunity that if someone wants to have a restaurant pad or an outdoor area, that they can set their building back, and they would actually put it on private property and not all on public property, because we know that situation that exists in our uptown currently. It's kind of cramping the sidewalk. So That's what we're trying to create. Plus, when you get into taller buildings, you'll want more of a setback. So it's providing that opportunity. There are also no parking standards in the U1. In the U2, we got parking standards. Most of those properties will redevelop with taller buildings, and therefore there's a parking standard being put in place. As we move, and you can see the red kind of goes out, the U2 goes out around both the roundabouts. The idea is that at those roundabouts, you want mixed-use buildings that'll be slightly taller and kind of build out to the property lines, and they kind of create just a development wall through the corridor. So the buildings are up close, and it creates a nice, tight-knit urban environment. The orange areas the orange area is a commercial district. We're calling it an urban transitional commercial district. And those areas where we've got a setback, again, where it can vary. So the developer comes in and maybe wants a 5-foot maximum. I believe we're at 12 foot, so they can vary that proposal. But in these districts, you're not going to be able to put the parking in front of the building. The building will be front and center on the property. On corner lots, we have certain setbacks for both sides. The parking will be in the back or alongside. So if you have a 120-foot lot and you want to build a 60-foot building, that building will be placed up towards the front, and the parking can be beside it, but it can't be in front of it. And if you go back and now my slides aren't working, you can see how we've kind of tried to outline that where the buildings are set up front on the corridor. So there's a total of 8 districts being created: the uptown districts, the residential transitional districts, the commercial transitional districts, and then the U1 is really the district where the Marriott is out to 31st Street. And it's almost more of a traditional commercial district. Just to kind of create borders, we established the U1 district, or the UC1 district, which is going to be very similar to a traditional commercial district. The public institutional district, this will be where we just preserve public grounds it's a separate zoning classification. So if the public does something, it's not like they have to rezone it. It's just a preservation. It's a means to preserve property for public use. One of the other things within the districts, we've identified the form of the building. So this is what you can. It's a kind of a hybrid Euclidean / form-based code. So these are, if you take a look at this is kind of looking down on the top of the buildings. You have a common yard proposal. So this is basically a sidewalk with a front porch and the house. You have a porch situation. You have a terrace. Terrace would be a stooped building. There's a forecourt. We don't have many of these in town. We've got one proposed, but that's where if you went into the building, there would be the building on either side. You may walk in. In the larger cities, you'll see them as brownstones, and the entry may be set back between 2 portions of the building. And then you've got the stoop, which is going to be up against the street, and then your typical storefront. What we've identified is that the form of the buildings in these areas are going to be tied to these specific building footprints. So when someone submits, we're going to be reviewing it based on these specific items, and each zoning district will specifically call out what is allowed in that district. This, if you can imagine, in the common yard and the porch situation, so these would be in the urban transitional districts where we want residential. If these are the 2 that are identified, you're not going to get the snout house. We're not allowing that garage to stick out in front. In those residential districts, we've also made it contextual to what's going on in those neighborhoods. If you drive around on the periphery of the uptown district, the houses are not set back 25 feet, but that's what our zoning regulations require. So we've done that where you can be between, I think we went between 5 and 12 feet. So you could actually build your house closer, but regardless of wherever your garage is, you've got to have 20 foot in front of your garage door wherever you are. So That's going to be, that's the standard that would be put in place in the area around uptown. And that's traditionally how the neighborhoods around the uptown are developed. I can tell you that there's probably two of them. If I mention them, you would say those don't fit into the context of the buildings. The two duplexes that went in on Fifth Avenue that are 2 stories with the 2-story garages. And then on 8th Avenue behind Subway, it was in a duplex where they paved the entire front yard. And you just park in the front yard. Clearly not something that we really want to see more of from a design perspective. So the zoning is going to drive some design considerations as we move it forward.
Yep,
Can
we
you
have
go
a
back?
question,
I
yeah.
just one quick question. So that will regulate terraces, et cetera, and mixed-use building. For instance, the mixed-use library project, when we had looked at that several months ago, and there was a question about balconies or not, and how those would be every other one, or on the inside or exterior. This will regulate that?
This would provide some general regulations for it. Within each district, there's encroachments, so it allows for an encroachment. In some of them, it allows for encroachments into the right-of-way, and it identifies those. And some of them, it allows for only it in the setback, and it's very specific to that. Okay. There's different schools of thought on balconies. Some folks like them, and some cities allow them, and some don't. I mean, that's just different schools of thought on that. We've provided the ability for encroachments. So like I said, I wasn't planning to do a big presentation in each district, but I wanted to give you a flavor for what's going on and some of the topics that have been talked about as we walk through these. This is a copy of 2 pages out of the code. If you can tell, it's completely different than what we do currently. Like I said, it's a hybrid form-based code. It's going to identify building placement relative to setbacks, parking placement. We don't want the parking in front of the building, so if your building setback 10 feet, your parking on the front yard should be set back 10 feet. We're really trying to keep the parking to the side or the rear of the building. And so in the Uptown 2 district, and I kind of talked about this, the parking would be the same, as you don't want that out in front. The urban transitional, as I just talked about, some of the setbacks will be different. If you look at where I was talking about from a zoning perspective, we're not going deep into the neighborhoods. This is just around the core of the community. I do foresee, and I think we talked about it as I was talking about the zoning for residential districts. When we went to the traditional districts, we did that 12-foot setback so that it's contextual to the neighborhood as well. So this kind of mirrors that. So, I'm not going to walk through them like I said. I'm going to provide these when we move forward. These will be discussed at much greater length when we get to the public hearing process. But I wanted the council to see, this is taking some time. The code looks different. It operates different. Functionally, it's different. And so there's just some things in it that are going to be require a little more review process. I don't foresee the review that we're currently doing through the IDO really going away. I would ask the council, if everything was put in place, would you not want to see the projects that are moving forward in the corridor? Or do you want to see them? In my mind, you guys would want to see them for a period of time. And I think that's something that you've probably appreciated. So my thought was that would move forward in a similar manner. So if there's a disagreement in that, please let me know. But, we've had development proposals come in the Uptown and in the historic districts, and HPC's reviewed them, Main Street's reviewed them, and then the Council and Planning Commission get an opportunity on those too. So that's the process that we've been following. I didn't really anticipate changing that up too much right away. And if there's a desire down the road that it's like, hey, this is just too much to be reviewing, we can back that off. But that would be my recommendation, unless there's something the council would not want to see. So,
Well, my personal view is we don't have enough council review or early enough review or input of these projects. So by the time it gets to us, it's almost too late.
Yep.
So I'm all for more, but I'm just one person.
One other thing that we're looking at, and we've never had really the opportunity to look at the idea of mixed-use projects. We've not had a whole lot of them in the community, and going to a shared parking standards, which would provide an incentive. So if I'm doing apartments and commercial, I can get a reduction in the parking standards by virtue of doing a mixed-use building. So there's a chart that we've used to calculate parking. So if you have 50 parking stalls, and you go to 2-story and you have some apartments, you may be able to get that reduced by a certain percentage, which is kind of an incentive to go 2 stories. And you will see in the core of the community, the U1, just so the council's aware, we're proposing that if someone comes in and wants to build in the U1, it's going to be 2 stories. That's the base standard. It's a 2-story building, and it's not a single-story building wouldn't be provided. You have to build a 2-story. So we are getting into the design elements a little stronger than we ever have, but I think it's for the better. We're trying to create density, which is value, which is tax base, and if you want walkable lifestyle communities, you got to have the density that drives that kind of a community. So anyway, I wanted to provide a little background on where we're at. We're going to have a steering committee meeting, which is a joint group of folks from Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council, I think Main Street, and the Chamber. We're going to get everybody together, and then we're going to hold a public hearing at the Planning Commission and start the approval process. So that being said, we're going to need to extend the IDO just to allow for that to occur.
Well, now that you've shown us that it's going to be worth it.
Okay. I thought that might make it a little easier. But we have made progress, and so, and as you can see, it's not the current code that we're used to
And I know
dealing with.
it takes a lot of work, and I do appreciate the amount of thought that has to go into this, because it's got to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having an ordinance is one thing. Having it be an ordinance that works and that is usable and that people can buy into and can accept. I mean, it may not be favored by everyone, but I think in the long run, it does meet sort of what we've been talking about for a long time, as the city being leading development, the city being in the driver's seat in terms of how our city develops, and this is a very important corridor here. And I know I probably sound like a broken record, but we get one chance to do it, and to do it right for the next several generations. So I do appreciate the work that you've put into it, and thanks for that update. I think it was very valuable. Sir?
Yeah, one idea I would have, and you maybe already have this, maybe you already thought about this, Tom, but in one of our next newsletters, after especially at this public hearing stage, a lot of times we do not get a lot of public at the public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure how many we'll really have for this, but it is such an important area of our community, and I think to communicate to everybody in our city newsletter in as simple of a manner as you can, to give them a picture of really what we've been working on, what is going to be happening from between the roundabouts, what the future vision is, and how you can describe that as, this is very complex.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you have layered there has so much detail. So what I'm asking for is how you can simplify that in a manner that you paint a simple vision for our citizens, so that they kind of know, here's what we're working at, for the next 20 years for that stretch of Marion. So again, we all know how important it is. We know we have a vision for it, and that's what you're outlining here for all of the developers and the landowners. But I think the citizens really need to understand conceptually what we're trying to do with that in as a simple of a manner as you can, but yet as detailed. But it's pretty tough request, but I think it'd add a lot to people understanding really where we're going.
And maybe you can work with Amber or someone to kind of put it in a consumable form that is easy to understand without being an expert at it. For the ordinary people like us up here and everyone else who aren't every day dealing with these concepts and these things. But I think people will appreciate that we're being more planful and not just allowing things to happen to us. That's an important thing to communicate. So, yes, sir.
You said there was going to be the public hearing. Were you planning an open house at all for the community, or?
We generally do an open house before public hearings at the P&Z, and we'd probably do it here as well. It's just, you're also going to see, and it's a little off topic, but the neighborhood Indian Creek, the update to that planning will also be moving forward. So I haven't really updated the council on that too much, but the zoning for the districts out there, it's a similar format.
Great.
One thing I guess I would say, and you could say this is just to cover Tom's hide, but in all of the communities when I've heard about form-based codes and new zoning ordinances and such, we probably won't get it right the first time, just so you're aware. And there's a lot of old properties and property sizes and lot sizes. So, as things come through, if they don't match correctly, we may have to go back and make some amendments and tweaks to that, just so the council's aware. There's no perfect zoning code right out the gate. And then also just taking a look at what we did with the accessory structures, and it's just something to consider. Most of the area on Fifth Avenue between here and 31st is going to a residential or multifamily residential zoning district classification, which means a lot of the uses down there are going to become what's considered a legal nonconforming use, which means they can continue to operate, they can sell, they can be sold and reinvested into a minimal degree. But if they're destroyed by fire, or if they cease to exist for a period of time, remember in the update to the nonconforming for a period of time, I think we went to 6 months, they cannot reestablish themselves as the uses they are. So that puts property owners kind of on notice that, hey, you can just for example, Tom Barnes is a legal nonconforming use. He's been that way for 25 years. Still operates the way he did 25 years ago, and there's no issue with that. But what has happened, even, and Dave, I think, has communicated this one time, is that there were numerous people out there waiting to pull a permit on an accessory structure that was larger than 900 square feet, understanding that the council was considering an ordinance that would restrict it. I think we had 7 or 8 permits come in.
Oh.
So as we start through the process, if we start seeing permit activity to get something in prior to the zoning, we'll want to let the council know that's occurring, and that moratorium conversation may be something we'd want to look at. If you get somebody that wants to open a new steel fabricating business on Fifth Avenue, you'd probably want to know that. So I know that's not popular, but it's just something that I think, and I noted that in my memo, that as these, sometimes you'll see permit activity kind of boost to kind of, I got my property, I want to do this, and they bring it in. So something to just consider as we move forward.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
Nope.
Thank you. Next.
So that covers down to number 13. Number 13, this is an exciting project, I think, for the city. Some of you on the council may recall that we had a development proposal for what was formerly the EIC property on Fifth Avenue, north of 22nd Street's intersection with Fifth Avenue, and the pointer here is at the intersection of, wait for it, but it'll come, 22nd and 5th. You can see there's some yellow lines there. There it is. That's 22nd Street extending north to 6th Avenue, and that's going to be that lighted intersection that you can see in the corridor plan. And so that's going to be a T intersection developed with the continued phase of 6th Avenue. We've been approached by an owner or a developer who wants to put in for a low-income housing tax credit project on the site. The site would be highlighted and hatched, and it would include also on the agenda the Lacey property that we have a purchase agreement for. If you recall, we talked a little bit about that. What is being requested is to essentially tie the property up, get a purchase agreement in place to move forward with an application to the state for the tax credits. The application deadline is November 1. The purchase agreement would just be basically an agreement between the city and the landowner establishing that there's support for the project. The dollar value would be it's about $2.74 a square foot for the entire site. That's what the last appraisal was for the raw ground. But I'd like to be able to come back and do a full appraisal of the property once we have it all under contract and sit back down at the table and be able to renegotiate based on the appraisal. And the developer has agreed to that situation. So this, I don't know, does anybody recall the TWG project on the site?
Either?
I don't know if anybody was on.
I do, yeah.
Yep. And so.
Mr. Sather?
Yes. And so TWG and TWG actually, they've done projects in downtown Cedar Rapids. Landover Corporation, Richard Sova, has also done projects in downtown Cedar Rapids, and he's been in the city for quite some time. He actually did the senior project behind Casey's on Marion Boulevard and Blair's Ferry Road. So he's very familiar with IFA and the Iowa Finance Authority and the tax credit projects. The project that's being looked at is very similar to the Kingston Village project that's in Cedar Rapids. So it'd be a 3-story building, about 50 units, and there would be, I believe that 10% would be market rate, and then there's I think I'd identified in my staff report a number of single, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments on the corner. The project would have to meet the state's Green Street standards and also all the standards that come along with being a part of the IFA project and receiving tax credits. Anyway, this would just provide the opportunity for the property to be tied up, application be made to the state, and then if the application is accepted, we'd sit back down at the table and continue to talk about the project as a whole.
So, well, does anybody have questions? You do? Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
So this building will be subject to the new standards?
Regardless, it'll come back to the council for review, yes.
I mean, I know, you often get renderings, but then you don't end up with what is in the rendering.
Mm-hmm. This is not the actual building.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Why would we even put that up there personally? What's going to be in the purchase agreement that will...
We would tie it up to the point where it'd come back for council consideration and review. I know you don't have a copy of it. The way, and I can get a copy to the council for consideration and review prior to. That's just that there's a November 1 deadline relative to the tax credit projects. I've been working with Mr. Sova for a couple weeks on this area. Actually, we've been working on it for quite some time, but the land area associated with the EIC just wasn't big enough. It's about 1 acre, and there's the necessity for a little bigger piece. It's still even tight with some parking considerations, but the idea is to be able to get at least an application to the state to see that the project is acceptable. The last time when TWG submitted, it was not an accepted project. So that just
Correct.
kind of falls to the wayside.
I mean, I've spoken with city manager about this too. I mean, I'm willing to be convinced, but my question is, why wouldn't we ask for RFPs? We, again, back on the notion of we have one chance to do this, to do it right, and get the maximize what we get. Why wouldn't we have an RFP process that solicits proposals and then we pick the best with definite, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to be. I'm willing to be convinced. I'm not. That's just my question, and I've wondered about that and I thought that would be coming with the various parcels that the city that owns up and down the corridor, but yeah.
I mean, that's certainly an option. This is just somebody that's approached us and said, we're willing to, we'd like to do a project.
No, I
here.
get it. I get it.
Still responding. I do think it fills a need. We've not had an apartment building this large that hasn't been senior in the community since Chapel Ridge, I believe, which
Yep.
which had I'm not sure what form of credits, but it had some state assistance in it as well. Is there more information you would request on this, or Mr. Silva could come to the council meeting on Thursday if you had questions regarding it, or?
Nice to just see what he really plans to do there.
Yeah,
Rather than have a rendering of something that looks nice that we don't know it's going to look anything like this. Go ahead.
it would seem that if he's going to be applying for these state credits, that he's going to have a fairly complete package to submit to them. But on the other hand, we're seeing I don't need the entire package, but it seems like we're seeing only a piece of what I would anticipate he's going to have to submit to the state by November 1st.
Yeah.
So are you telling me he doesn't have all of that ready yet, or he's just not giving us what he already has ready to submit to the state?
So he has more information. He's got more of the dollars and cents, the pro forma behind it. I'm hoping to be able to share that with the economic development team. I was hoping to do it last week, but tomorrow morning we meet again just to talk about the dollars. He's done a project. He's done essentially this project in Dubuque, and so he's got the numbers. It's just the design of the site. He doesn't have that solidified at this point. He's indicated that the quality of materials would be similar to this. In our conversation, from my perspective, even looking at the one behind Casey's, that's a nice building.
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a pre-application, and then he has to be invited back for full, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Oh, so he just has to be ready at a certain level, maybe not the complete level that we're thinking
the
about.
state changed their process on this because what they were running into is developers are going out, putting earnest money down on sites and doing a lot of work to do a full application. And so rather than having everybody do that, they've gone to a pre-application process where you do a pre-application and then you're invited back for the next round. So that's why I think with these we're not seeing the level of information that we would have, like for example when the senior housing projects came through. The other thing that I would clarify to the mayor's point is that the Green Street standard that Tom is talking about have requirements in them that would be, I think, in excess of anything that we would require for the building design, how they're constructed. They're very particular about a lot of the issues that you would see on construction as far as the standards of what they're looking for. The other thing that Tom didn't address is that with a project like this, the first thing that sometimes the public reaction is negative. But when you're dealing with a project like this from the city standpoint, we are much better off to have either HUD dollars or tax credit dollars involved because of the standards that come with how the properties have to be managed, the rules that they need to follow, the requirements that are set aside for future maintenance of the facilities. I mean, those will last the entire term of the tax credits. So you have some security with these as far as how they're operated and the impact on your community that you don't if they're just financed 100% out of private funding.
And am I correct in that one positive is that this does meet a defined need in our housing study?
This was one of the top 2 needs identified in our housing needs assessment.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a benefit to it. I just again my only question or concern is to make sure that we're getting the best and the maximum that we can get as we go down this corridor and help it redevelop from an industrial corridor to a central business district type corridor. We get one chance to do it. So it seems to me that you'd want to know the full array of options and then decide and then pick the best.
Yep.
Maybe that's with future the rest of the parcels. I don't know, but just my thought. Other questions?
Would
Go ahead.
And I'll be the first to admit I am not an expert on the tax credit projects and the application procedure and process. And Lon's correct; they went to the pre-app, which is different than they've done in the past. So I'm just trying to respond to this, and from a project perspective, it'd be a good project on the corridor. It'd be out of the gate. The one, I guess, nice thing about it is if the project was approved and it did move forward, clearly the council and the planning commission would have full review over that project, and until there was an agreement on it, it wouldn't move forward. And the result, as the developer, would be they'd lose the tax credit. So there is a
but
there is an incentive there for them
also to be in that position of causing them to lose their tax credits is not
ideal.
They want to be in.
What I would say is that the project it wouldn't start until October, I think, of next year if it was awarded. So there'd be some time, and a part of that would be getting 22nd Street in and the corridor in that area completed as well. So it would be one of the first projects in that area off the bat.
Sir.
One quick one. This would face 6th Avenue, backside to 5th, but
Yep.
face 6th.
Yep. Yeah, that's one thing that I was very particular about in any conversation was that it would face that. Yep.
Anything else? Anyone?
I understand where you're coming from with the RFPs and everything, but I do think that's a good project that we need in our city. And from what you were just showing with the future along there, this is exactly what this is going to be zoned for. It's a good starting point too. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Other questions?
Nope.
All right. Next.
And then coinciding with this is the approval of the council's acceptance of the purchase agreement for 2274 Fifth Avenue, which is the Lacey property east of EIC, the old EIC site. So this property would be included in the purchase agreement as it moves forward with Mr. Sova. Just so the council is aware, from a dollars and cents perspective, when we acquire the property, we're acquiring it based on this was the 130%. So we're going off the appraised value of that, which includes buildings. So when you turn around and demo the building, you're going to go back to the appraisal based on the dollar square foot of a clear site. So that it's not going to be, we'd be lucky probably to sell all of the property for the value that we're spending on the Lacey property, just from the virtue of when you acquire property with pre-existing buildings, you're paying for the building. So I just want to make sure that there's no sticker shock or conversation about that, just a general understanding from, and a portion of it would be for 6th Avenue.
Who's removing the buildings?
The city would remove the buildings. Yeah. Anyway.
Tom, can you tell me, do we have any issues or concerns with the soil in that particular area? Are we going to run into any issues with that?
So the EIC site, which we've done phase 1s and phase 2s on that property in the past. It is required that a phase 1 be done as a part of the application for the state. We're going to get phase 1s done on both the Lacey property and the EIC property by November 1. That's what I'm told today. And the way that that's structured is in the event that that everything goes through, that they would be included in the purchase agreement, the cost of the purchase agreement. So it is kind of nice if we maintain those phase 1 documents, because if it doesn't go through, we still own it, and if you get somebody else engaged, you have that document. It's owned by the city then, and it's our document. So the problem with a phase 1 is, you guys have probably, it's been a while since we've really talked about it, but a phase 1 environmental only has a shelf life of about 12 to 18 months, and then you got to get them renewed. And so up and down the corridor, we've done phase 1s and phase 2s up and down this corridor for, I hate to even say it, but 15 years. So some properties have been studied more than once. A lot of them were paid for originally through grant dollars. There was a phase 1, phase 2 on the EIC site, which goes all the way over to almost 21st Street. I think we've done several studies, and I don't think we had any cleanup remedy on this site, but if you recall what that used to look like, it was a little bit of a mess. But from an environmental perspective, it wasn't that bad. There was only one study, and I forget what exactly the chemical was above statewide standards. So, but we do need to get those updated. Anyway.
Okay, other questions? Thank you, sir. Mr. Plucon?
The first item under the city manager section is to talk about a potential loan guarantee for the Marion YMCA project. If you remember, when Zach came to the council, he filed a letter with several requests to help to move this project across the finish line. One was some assistance with the purchase of the property, which we've already done. Another one was to take a look at how the access fees are set up out there. There are access fees on Irish Drive and access fees on Tower Terrace, and the other one was to consider providing a guarantee for the financing for the project. So I just wanted to kind of update you on where we're at with those discussions. We will not have anything on the agenda for Thursday night related to this. That would be potentially coming back in November for council consideration, but I wanted to see if there were any minefields or anything that I was stepping into before we brought something back to council. Essentially, the way that it was originally envisioned is that the YMCA was going to have kind of two separate loans for the construction of the facility. The first one was a pledge loan that would cover the period of time where the pledges were coming in, and then that debt would be retired with pledges. The second one was essentially a loan that would kick in at about year 9 and run out through year 20 for the remainder of the construction cost of the facility. And what they've encountered since then in discussions with the banks is that it looks like it's going to need to be a participation loan with several banks participating. And so a couple of the banks are asking the city to consider providing a guarantee earlier on the project. And so I wanted to have that discussion with council and just see if you're okay with doing that, kind of what level of guarantee you'd have any interest in providing. When we did it with Prospect Meadows, we are backing that guarantee with future hotel motel revenues. And then we have an agreement with Prospect Meadows that says that once their private debt is retired, that if the guarantee has to be exercised, that they will pay us back. And the YMCA would have a similar agreement with us that in the event that any guarantee that we would provide would have to be exercised, they would pay it back. We do not have the option of backstopping it with hotel motel the way that we do out with Prospect Meadows, but we do have the option of backstopping it with tax increment financing. When the project moved from the other location along Winslow Road over to this area on Tower Terrace, it moved from not being in an urban renewal area to the Tower Terrace, the West Tower Terrace urban renewal area. And that district has been in place for a while. It's not one that we have very heavily utilized. We've only actually done a couple of projects out there, with one being ESCO and the other being repaying some bonds that we issued for the construction of Tower Terrace Road. So that district on an annual basis right now actually has cash flow that we could tap into that we are not using of over $1.8 million a year. So the district itself has matured. It's healthy financially. There is revenue there that could be used to recoup anything in the event that we do have to exercise a backstop, but there would be a delay. Unlike hotel motel, where we receive receipts for that as it's collected by the state and then disbursed to us, if you're using tax increment financing, there's a delay between the time that the payments are made and then you have to certify the debt to the county by December, and then it's recovered in the following budget year. So there's always a period of lag there in between. I have talked with our TIF attorneys about ways that something like that could be structured. They're going to provide me a couple of different options for how something like that could be done, so that we can actually have some more concrete proposals to put in front of the city council. I guess what I wanted to know is, from your standpoint, is something like this a no-go? Should I put effort into it? If it's something you're still interested in, do you have a number on an annual basis that starts to give you heartburn or starts to give you pause for what the city can or should potentially backstop a project like this? The pro forma for the facility shows that after it's up and revenue stabilizes, it should have plenty of cash flow to be able to make their annual payments, but there's always risk going out there into a new market. And that's what the banks really are seeking to cover, is that period of risk. I think we would certainly know, under the old scenario where our guarantee would have come into play at year 9, we would have known where we were at with a cash flow standpoint and the likelihood that the guarantee would have ever been exercised. If we move it forward, that risk, I think, proportionately goes up, especially for the first couple of years until the facility is fully running and all of their membership revenues and everything are stabilized for the facility. But from the beginning, every study that we've ever done has shown that the facility should be able to have a pretty healthy cash flow. So just wanted to have that discussion with you. At this point, I don't have particular guidance that I can offer. The banks would certainly like the number to be higher. My incentive is to make the number lower, but just wanted to see from the council, do you have something that, would really start to make you nervous?
Ms. Gadila.
Yes. Let me preface this with saying I'm in favor of the why. I'm excited about everything I've seen in terms of the look, what it hopes to do, how we're partnering with parks. But until I see a specific fundraising plan, I'm not in favor of the city doing anything else to help prop it up. I think that there's too much on the front end right now without the back end private stuff coming, and that gives me concern. So I would not be for adding additional risk onto the city until I have more confidence in what their specifics are for fundraising, what their targets are. I asked when Zach came in September and presented the communication plan, I thought that was very well detailed, and I was impressed by that. And until I see something similar on fundraising, I personally am out on putting any more risk on the city on the front end.
Other comments, questions?
I will echo that. Lon, back on the 2nd of October, I had asked for a copy of an agreement with us and the YMCA. Can you tell me the status of that? Do we have a contract with the Y?
There is not a contract with the Y, and that has been intentional. We have resolutions that the council has passed for making a capital contribution to it. The reason for that is that if we had a specific contract whereby we were doing something like directing the form of the facility, where it was going to go, what it was going to have in it, how it was going to operate, that would make it a city facility and therefore subject to public bidding. As long as we're making a capital contribution to a fund drive that's been done by another organization, we don't have to worry about that. Because if you think about all the things that we might make a capital contribution to, say Medco decided they wanted to move into an office building and build their own building, and the city was going to make a capital contribution to that, if we have something in place that does that, then we would potentially make it subject to becoming a city project and make it subject to public bidding. Because of the way the lease purchase legislation has been structured, we've been very diligent about not crossing that line on this to make it a city project.
Okay. Thank you for that. I as well, I feel I'm in total support of the Y. We got some projects that I just feel I'm going to go back to the fiduciary responsibility that the bank has, and that is if they're asking for this backing, I got to ask if that's really what we should be doing. I wished I had more confidence in. I struggle with the current facility, the decisions that have been made to run it to the level that it has today, and yet we're going to project that we're going to offer some kind of loan guarantee. Without really knowing what that forecast looks like in the future. So I as well, too, I'm going to be reserved with that. We got the CIP, and we're going to be wondering what's going to get cut out of that, and the city's been put into a position here to extend our assets, so I won't be supporting that.
Anyone else?
My question would be, you said the bank has a number in mind and you have a number in mind. What are those two numbers?
Well, the bank wants it to be as high as they can get it. For me, when I look at what they're requesting, there's a couple of things in play that are really driving that number. Their goal has been to have a capital fund drive that allows them to cover the cost of construction of the facility. But what you run into is that a lot of those are pledges. So there's that period of time between when you build the building and when it's constructed that you have to cover the construction interest and you have to cover the pledge loan interest. So that's essentially what the guarantee would be covering. And depending on the length of time and the final financial package that they're going to present, that number could be anywhere between $4 million and $8 million. The longer the construction process takes, the bigger that number gets. The more aggressive they are, the more successful they are in their fundraising, the lower the number is. Personally, for me, when I look at it and start thinking about what's a number that the city could potentially handle on a facility this size, if you're sitting at about a $500,000 annual appropriation loan guarantee, which means that the council has to make a deliberate decision every year to offer the guarantee, that's something that we can handle backed by that district. If you start to get beyond that number, I start to get nervous because then it starts to, especially if it starts to get exercised multiple times, really starts to take a bite out of the available cash flow in West Tower Terrace. You know, you can exercise it once or twice out there, and we can finance that. We can recover the costs from that district in a fairly short period of time. But what I wouldn't want to do is put the city in a position where we have to recover it over 15 years or something like that. So that's the number that I have always had in the back of my head when I look at a project of this scale. You know, in all honesty, the single cheapest way to do it, the most cost-effective one for the overall facility and operations of the facility, is to look more at the models that have been used in places like Marshalltown and Indianola. In those cases, the city actually built the facility, owns the facility, but then they either have an operating agreement with the YMCA, like in the case of Marshalltown, or in the case of Indianola, they have an operating and purchase agreement with the YMCA. So at the end of 20 years in that that case, the YMCA will own the building. Marshalltown's retaining ownership, the YMCA operates it on their behalf. That is the single least expensive option to get the facility up and running. But with all of the discussions and everything that we've had with council, I just didn't feel like the council was in a position to say, we want to take on the debt to build it, and here's what our lease payment and obligations would be from the YMCA, have them assign the pledges to us, and so on.
Okay.
So, for public disclosure, I am the building committee chairman for this facility for the Y. So any future discussions or votes on anything in this area, I would have to abstain. But the Y certainly is at a very critical stage from the standpoint of how this project moves along. The land is now in place, that's acquired, so I think that's a giant step going forward. But from the standpoint of how the fundraising has been going is certainly different, as Zach and others have indicated in the past. It isn't at the level of which everybody had hoped for. So that makes it comes back to the bank financing and how that's going to be structured. And being in that industry in the past as well, I understand that they're going to be looking for as much upfront support as they can get. So I don't believe that this is going to move forward without some kind of a backstop by the city. So I guess what I would suggest to the others on the city council that will vote on anything going forward, if it comes up for vote, is let's make it very clear what information, and you've made some comments tonight, but if you need to clarify those as well, let's make sure that we understand what information you're going to need in order to put yourself in a position that you have everything that you're going to need to be as comfortable or as informed as you can. So Randy kind of talked about projections, you talked about fundraising. So I think if there's other information needed and all of that, we should probably clarify that, get that back to Zach and the Y so that that information is made available. You understand where all of that is at, and then the city council can make an informed decision.
Yep. Certainly they have to provide all of that information for the application process for the bank anyway. So
Absolutely.
Anything that you would need should be available for council perusal. And I know he'd be more than willing to share it.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
One other. With Prospect Meadows, what was the guarantee that we did for that? Was it 100?
The total was 2.5, but that was split between us and Lynn County. So our guarantee was up to 1.25.
Up to over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? So there's no action item for Thursday on this?
No, there's not.
This is just for you to get some sense of how you should proceed?
Yep.
Okay. You got what you need?
I believe so.
Okay. We have a police department plan, strategic plan presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight with me is Lieutenant Scott Elam. Lieutenant Elam's been with the Marion Police Department for, 62 years now? 22 years now. That's like 11 times as long as I've been. He knows this area. He has great relationships across the community, and the goal he's going to present on tonight is developing collaborative partnerships with area criminal justice agencies. It's real important because we're the 14th largest city in Iowa, and what's unique about us is we're married at the hip to the second largest city in Iowa. We share borders, so we have a lot of transient things that we need to deal with. And so what he's going to talk about is an important part of our strategic plan, and this is the guy to lead it for us. So, Lieutenant Elam.
Thank you. Welcome, Lieutenant.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I want to talk a little bit about the strategic plan the police department came up with. And I want to go over really quick, just kind of review the mission statement. The mission of the Marion Police Department is to effectively use resources to respond, investigate, and prevent crime in order to enhance the quality of life and strengthen economic prosperity for our community. That's what the police department, when we got together, we came up with our mission statement. That's why we exist. That's what our purpose is. But then we came up with the missions, with the vision statement. And the vision statement is not only why do we exist, but where do we want to go? And our vision statement that we came up with was the Marion Police Department is a metro leader among law enforcement agencies by growing with excellence through an emphasis on employee development and strategic collaborative partnerships with their community, other city departments, and other law enforcement agencies. So as part of this, of the mission statement, the vision statement, we came up with 6 strategic goals to get to that end. And I'm here today to talk to you about number 5, which is develop collaborative partnerships with area criminal justice agencies. We already work with other criminal justice agencies. We can't do it alone. Our crime isn't just confined to Marion. We have people that come into town, and like the chief said, we're butted up to Cedar Rapids. People don't realize that they've crossed the border, and they come into town, and then they leave. So we can't just focus on ourselves and our residents because it's bigger than that. And my investigative experience, most of my career has been in investigations. I spent time at DEA. I've been a detective, and now I'm in charge of the investigations unit. And during that time, like I said, you can't go it alone. You have to be able to call somebody else. You have to be able to pass on information, and that's kind of where we're at. And we've done that for years, but over time, it's gotten much bigger. It used to be that most of our problems were at least within this area, and recently we've come across problems that are coming from out of state to our area. And that makes it really difficult for law enforcement when you don't have connections that you can track those people down. They come in, they commit a crime, and they're gone, and it makes it really tough for us to follow up. But we're doing that, but these are on top of those relationships that we've already made with other agencies. So we developed, for that goal, for goal number 5, we developed five strategies to come up with that could help us come to that. So strategy 5.1 is determine geographical boundaries in the area. And as part of that, we want to keep our GIS maps updated. If we're looking at a data-driven strategy, our data has to be dead on. It's kind of garbage in, garbage out. If we're not putting in good information, we're not going to get good information back. And part of that is we have to make sure that if we're looking at coming up with hot spots and where crime's occurring, if our maps aren't current, then our information is not good either. Another strategy is police chief to communicate with other Eastern Iowa law enforcement agency leaders to discuss and engage in data-driven strategies. And we've already kind of started that. In August 2017, we sponsored an SNA project called Operation Clean Sweep, and that involved all law enforcement agencies in Lynn County, including probation, parole, and also the U.S. Marshals Service. And we also, in May of 2018, we hosted a 2-day training for SNA, which included area agencies, Cedar Rapids PD, Lynn County Sheriff's Office, Iowa City PD attended, Dubuque PD, and also Ames PD. And what we did is we took all the data, drug-related data from those agencies, we pulled it all together, and we determined that we would expect that there would be connections between the agencies that are fairly close, between Cedar Rapids, Marion, and Lynn County. But we found that there was also connections going to Iowa City. All the cities had connections somewhat, and which kind of really drives home the point that this is a lot bigger than just our local agency. This crime spreads out fairly wide. Strategy 5.2, find opportunities to submit multi-jurisdictional grants. Look for opportunities to apply for and receive grant funding to be used for evidence-based strategies and equipment that can be shared regionally. The days of just saying, hey, what happens if we put in for this money and do this, what's going to happen, are over. Now, as funds get tighter, everybody wants to know that they're putting money towards something that's going to work. And we have to have evidence behind it to back that up. And that's what we're looking at is applying for grants that we have information we can back up with an evidence-based strategy that this will work. As part of that, though, it requires personnel for grant writing and grant administration. If you've ever been involved in a grant, there's a lot of paperwork on the front end and on the back end as well that a lot of people don't realize. It takes a lot of resources. Strategy 5.3, MPD data analyst spearheads regional data sharing effort to share regional data analysis and intelligence information and to network with regional data intelligence analysts. So you met Sunshine McDonald. She's our intel analyst. She's been working on networking with Cedar Rapids, had an intel analyst. She left. They've just hired another one who hasn't, I don't think he's actually started yet, but we'll get together with them. She's also met with FBI, DEA, they all have analysts. But then last month, we had a meeting that we invited all analysts across the state to come to, and it was attended by about 10 to 13 different agencies that sent people. And the idea for that was that we wanted to get those analysts networking. Everybody does a little bit different stuff. You know, some do data analysts, some do intel analysts, some look at people, and not everybody does the same thing. So we want to kind of get everybody together to figure out what they do and how they do it, because our data analyst is very good at what she does, but she's lacking in some other areas that she needs to develop a little bit, so she can make those connections, those networks with somebody else that maybe is already there. Then why reinvent the wheel? If she can get information from them, we can cover it that way. And our goal is to, we had that meeting in September. Our goal is to have another one in the spring. Maybe not necessarily at Marion PD, but maybe try to get it over toward Des Moines or something like that. But we are leading the charge for that, to try to get that going. Strategy 5.4: continue involvement in the DEA task force. The DEA and Marion have been together since 1998. I was the first Marion officer to go to the DEA task force, and every DEA task force officer from Marion PD that's come back to the police department has come into the investigations division. It's a force multiplier. It gives us additional resources that we don't normally have access to, but it's also an excellent training area for us to send officers to, that they can become familiar with some investigative techniques and deal with other investigators that aren't from our agency. Criminals don't often stay in one jurisdiction. We already talked about that. Information sharing regarding joint investigations. We've had times where we'll be looking at somebody, and then you start talking to somebody else and find out that they're looking into either the same person or people that are tied into the same person. And it's like putting a puzzle together. You know, everybody's got a little piece of it, and you don't need all the pieces until you can see what the picture is going to be. And that's kind of what we do. We start putting those puzzle pieces together. We've also, we just recently committed to part-time with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. My goal would be down the road to put somebody on that task force full-time, but at this point we can't dedicate that manpower to them. And they've been very cooperative with us. They'll take whatever we can give them, but again, they give us quite a bit back as well. That if we have a case that we're looking for a fugitive, we can send that to them, and then we also have the resources from that from their task force. We also belong to the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the FBI in Cedar Rapids. We also belong to, there's a couple of other organizations. One is called LEAN. It's the Law Enforcement Intelligence Network. We belong to that. And also MOCIC, which is the Mid-States Organized Crime Information Center, and that's even bigger. It serves, I think there's 9 states altogether: Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Minnesota, and it's everybody pulling information together to keep track of what's going on in our area. Strategy 5.5 is enhanced sharing of Marion PD special units. We've already got several special units. We have K9, we have, and those units train together. Our SRT trains with the other area SRT units. We have a joint hazardous device unit with Wayne County, but we want to look for other examples to kind of spread some of that out. It doesn't make much sense for everybody to have a specialized unit when we could combine with other areas and kind of share that cost a little bit. And one example of that is a mobile field force. Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, and Marion are all working on that, and for us, the personnel have already been selected for that. It's just a matter of starting and getting that training going. So that's kind of where we're at with goal number 5 for collaboration. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions or comments? Lieutenant Elam? Did you? Oh.
No, I'm a big fan of collaboration. So I mean, any entity, any organization I've been involved in, if you can capitalize on your dollars and stretch it out through collaboration,
Leveraging your resources by collaborating.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
leverage it. That's a great idea.
Especially for grants, if you're looking for equipment.
Yeah.
You know, if you have 3 agencies within one county that all are going to get the same equipment, do you really need to have the same equipment 3 times? And
Yep.
it just doesn't make much sense.
And I think as a city, we've been doing a better job at that, and so to the extent we can continue to look for those opportunities, it's great.
Some equipment that you use every day that everybody needs, but there's other equipment that
Yeah.
might be a little more specialized that you don't need all the time, that everybody can kind of go together on.
Yes.
So there's not a dedicated grant writer. Is there somebody whose responsibility it's been that you guys look to, or is it depending on what you're going out for a grant, how you assign it?
It just depends on who's going after the grant. I've gotten grants before for investigations. Lieutenant Murda's gotten grants before for patrol, but that's kind of the area where we're each assigned. So we don't have anybody specifically dedicated to that.
And is that something that maybe could be shared by collaborating with other communities? I mean, I don't know if Marion PD requires a dedicated grant writer, if there's even that many opportunities out there, but is that something that has been discussed in your various collaborations with neighboring entities, that if there was one person dedicated to that, especially if you're leveraging resources?
It hasn't been discussed that I'm aware of, unless there's something that you've talked about.
No, and the grants that we've gone after so far, we haven't been successful in getting because simply we don't have enough crime sometimes at that level. And that's one of the factors, which is a good thing. But I contracted out with some individuals that I'd worked with previously to help us with the bulk of the verbiage and stuff once we give them the parameters. So really just kind of farming it out with the grant proposal. But where it gets ugly is when one day we do get one, that'll probably be a good day and a bad day. Those are the best and the worst days, the day you get it and the day you get rid of it, when you get the money. So, but we've got to go after it. There's so many opportunities for us to collaborate with, at the University of Iowa with the opioid epidemic, to take these strategies and invest, manpower over time, to where we can be proactive instead of reactive, because with our staffing right now, we've got to have that extra bump to do the extra things.
Yeah, and that's why I asked. I think it's, free money, who doesn't want it? But it's such a niche to write them, and the deadlines and the hoops you have to jump through. I was just wondering what our resources were.
Yeah, that free money comes with unforeseen expenses when you have to start tracking stuff and submitting information to the grant agencies.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Only one more to go now.
One more?
One more.
Okay.
I'm buying beers.
Very good.
Be on beers next time.
His audience wasn't as big as the last few, though.
He's got some heavy hitters back there, though. I'll just put that out there.
Anything else on the agenda that we haven't covered? If not, I will note we're going to have a closed session after the meeting on Thursday regarding land acquisition. And I'd like to welcome 3 people back here who are all applicants for the Ward 1 seat. So if you haven't had a chance to meet them, there's a good opportunity to meet them. So, okay. And if there's nothing else, the meeting's adjourned. See you on Thursday.